So welcome everybody. I am excited. There's so many people I know in the room. I didn't even expect that. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Sion Winship. I am the secretary of the Neutra Institute for Survival Through Design. And then I also, but my other hat that many of you know me as is the president of the Society of Architectural Historians Southern California chapter. So now that I'm somehow doing programming for both institutions, we do a lot of events here at the Neutra office. So that's basically that. Today we are so excited to have Eddie Jones, FAIA, with us. Eddie reached out to me actually through the SAH. And then when we started talking a little bit more about the practice, I thought, oh, this makes a lot more sense for the Neutra Institute to sponsor this event, because he has been actually putting into practice what we've talked about in terms of promoting design and architecture that is reflective of scientific principles and psychology, and how that can all promote well-being in experiencing architecture. So he's going to tell us all about that today. I have learned that in addition to being the founder and principal of Jones Studio, he was born in Texas.
Yes.
And he was raised.
Hold that against me.
Fortunately, he was raised in Oklahoma, so he saw the error of his ways and left early on. And he graduated from Oklahoma State University and opened his own studio in 1979 in Arizona. So he was really a pioneer down there. For those of you, I think at least a couple of you were with us on the Out of the Shadow tour when we did Phoenix and architecture down in that part of the world. So I'm so sorry we didn't meet then, but better late than never. So he's going to chat today. And then after that, we'll take some questions from the audience. And I'm also pleased to say that he is a contributing essayist to Alan Hess's forthcoming book, The Palm Springs School of Architecture, which comes out this spring. So you'll get a little preview, a little good experience with Eddie, and then hopefully we'll all see each other out in Palm Springs in springtime. So without further ado, please welcome Eddie Jones.
I really appreciate you taking your Saturday morning and coming to this. It's an honor to be here. And so we'll get this going. You know, I'm not a neuroscientist either, but reading Neutra Survival Through Design, chapter 44 is particularly interesting. And, you know, even in the first paragraph, he talks about architecture can be called reflective because it mirrors a program of conduct and living. And when he wrote that, he probably wasn't thinking on a scale that included geopolitical hot potatoes and bilateral trade agreements and law enforcement and inspection. But today I want to make that connection. I want to show that even at a scale and complexity of a higher order, these principles still work. I abide by them. So we're going to talk about land ports of entry. If you enter this country, you're either going to be at a seaport, an airport, or a land port. Because this map of the United States, when you turn up the 6 o'clock news on, I think people have forgotten we have two borders. You know, we think we only have one border these days. But did you know that the Canadian-US border is the longest country-to-country border in the world? It's 3 times the length of the southern border. And along the Canadian border, there are 119 border crossings. And there's not a barrier. Only 35 border crossings between Mexico and the United States. Now, since I put this together, these numbers have flipped. The dollars and trucks per day. Mexico is now the largest trading partner over Canada. You won't hear that on the 6 o'clock news. Now, who builds ports? Who owns the ports? Well, the federal government owns them. And the federal government, their property manager is called the General Services Administration, the GSA, and they're the largest landlord in the world. And back in the day, any federal project, taxpayer money, the attitude was they have to be as cheap and economical as possible because it's taxpayer money. Well, thanks to the wisdom of Patrick Moynihan, who was a New York senator, he realized back in the early 90s that this isn't representing the government of the United States very well. It's not expressing the values of our government. So he put together these 3 design principles. But they're amazing. He created the Design Excellence Program. The 3 principles of the Design Excellence Program is, one, that the architecture should express the dignity, stability of the American government. The next one is an official style should be avoided. Now, you probably remember, maybe you don't if you're not architects, but the Trump administration decided all federal projects should be the classical style. Now, imagine a land port of entry with Corinthian column. And then the other one that you can't see was that all designs should start with the site conditions. So let's talk about borders. Great Wall of China. You all know it. That's a pretty good wall. And if you follow it, it's fascinating. I'm sorry about those bars at the top, but it just goes on and on forever. It's a 3,000-year-old idea that we're still thinking we can implement today. But it didn't even work 3,000 years ago. One thing about the Great Wall of China, it was built along the ridges of the mountains. So the drainage patterns occurred equally on either side. Our border fence does the opposite. It goes into the valleys and blocks the natural drainage patterns, and of course has environmental consequences. But if you sort of forget about the contentiousness and the politics, and you think about Christo's running fence, it kind of reminds me of that. And even though our immigration policies are obsolete and don't work, the United States is still the attraction for a lot of people wanting to live here. And your attitude about that can be measured in one of 2 ways. You can feel compassion for migrants. You can not want them dying in the desert because they can't cross legally, or you can be on the side of, you may recognize this was Trump's political stunt when he duped, many contractors to spend millions of dollars building a prototype of the best wall. All of these were breached by Customs and Border Protection with tools they bought at Home Depot. I bet a lot of you know the name Ron Rael. Great architect, great artist. Ron, unlike myself, knows how to poke the bull without pissing people off. He built these beautiful pink teeter-totters in the studio and covertly arrived at the border in El Paso with his crew, unloaded the teeter-totters. They had already tested them. They clamped them to the fulcrum and stood back. And what happens next? The children on the Mexico side come, the children on the United States side come, and intuitively they know that unless they cooperate, they will not be successful. And then they left after 45 minutes because they became bored and left the border patrol scratching their heads. But if children can do it, I think adults can do it too. Now, Um, Alberto Rios is the poet laureate of Arizona. He was commissioned by then Governor Janet Napolitano to write a poem in commemoration of Vicente Fox, who was the president of New Mexico at the time when he visited Arizona. I won't read the whole poem, but except for the last line. Together, let us turn the map until we see clearly. The border is what joins us, not what separates us. Now, depending on which way you think, you will design a different land port of entry. I think that's obvious. So along with Patrick Moynihan's guiding principles, we let that last sentence be our guiding principle too. So the first land port of entry was in Nogales, Arizona, sister city Nogales, Sonora. You can see the Baja Peninsula, Sea of Cortez, mainland Mexico with a little red rectangle is the location of Mariposa. It's 5 miles west of the main town of Nogales. And this is what I just remembered, Larry. Quick aside. We were 8 people. Joe's studio was 8 people. It's 2007. And the advertisement for this land port of entry comes across our screen. And I had been appointed a national peer reviewer. So I had been doing peer reviews for borders in Texas. And you know, I didn't know shit about any of this stuff, but I'm sitting there as a peer learning about land ports. And so I told my partner, Neil, my brother and business partner, that I think we should go after this. He goes, are you crazy? You know, we don't know anything about trucks and circulation and turning radiuses. And I go, I kind of do. So let's try it. And that's when I interviewed Alberto Rios because he had grown up in Nogales, Sonora, Nogales, Arizona. And you know, so I learned the backstory of the whole thing, and I was able to write that in a narrative. Long story short, we get shortlisted with 4 other firms. We're the only firm from Arizona. We're the only firm without any experience either. We go to San Francisco for the big interview with GSA. I am so scared. And I walk in the conference room and there's Larry Scarpa sitting there. The first thing out of his mouth, Eddie, I really like your work. I just went, oh. And so thank you. I don't know if I've had a chance to thank you for that. But so it was a mess when we got there. And so I can talk about how we reoriented the circulation and we made it linear and it's more like you know, the train yards of the 19th century. But I'd rather talk about what it takes to embed humanity in a place where you're going to be inspected. Now, I cross the border all the time. I have to go through the same processing everybody else does, and I always feel guilty. It just sucks. You know, you process and inspect it. So GSA is telling us, we want you to express the dignity of the United States, and we want you to make people feel welcome and respected. Then you get Customs and Border Protection, who's the tenant, wanting to project law enforcement, serious law enforcement. And then you have the visitors coming over, they're the users, and they're just, you know, tolerating an experience. So that's why I said reconciling the border on the title. And so to do that, we just zone the property. The tan is for outgoing, you know, southbound people going to Mexico. The pink is northbound, you know, private cars, pedestrians going into the United States. The blue is commercial. And that green zone in the middle is what we call the oasis. We use the buildings as the security barriers as opposed to razor wire and barbed wire. So how are you going to put an oasis in the Sonoran Desert it gets less than 4 inches of rain a year. Plus, this is Lake Powell, our main source of water. And you can see how that's doing. You know, climate change is causing less snow in the Rockies. Less snow in the Rockies means less snow melt. Less snow melt means less water in the reservoir. So the Mariposa site is 54 acres. And it's like, how are we going to irrigate 54 acres? We can't depend on the water system of Nogales. It's already overstressed. And we can't, start sucking more water off the Colorado River. So all of the roofs are capture rainwater. Also, all of the parking areas and paved areas capture rainwater. And, through a system of scuppers and sunken planters, we're able to filter that water and send it into a storage system. You notice the shade structure overhead. We stole that idea from Native Americans, and how to passively create more tolerable temperatures. This is one of the main scuppers you see there on the left. Now, I said it rains less than 4 inches a year. Some people were critical, saying, well, it doesn't rain enough. Why are you going to all this trouble to harvest rainwater? That's precisely why we're going to the trouble to harvest rainwater, because it doesn't rain enough. The monsoon season gives us all of our rain. When this fort went into operation, the first monsoon filled the storage tank. You can see how the water is all piped to a central area, and it goes to an underground storage system that has the capacity to store 1 million gallons of water. First monsoon, it filled the tanks. And even though we're pumping from the storage system all year long, they've never been empty. They're always replenished just in time for another monsoon. And look, we get our garden. Now, this Mariposa, the port was, it was a dangerous place when we got there. It was hot, it was dusty, there was no shade. Because there were so long wait times, the fumes from idling trucks and idling cars put a concentration of pollution. People were all over the place, it was unsafe. But when you give people a garden, the air is cleaner, you give them shade, they're more comfortable. The officers feel safer. The visitors feel respected and welcomed. And guess what? And that's what this is talking about. Guess what happens? The anxiety levels drop. You're still getting inspected, but it's less of a scary. And so everybody wins. Architecture counts. They step into the lobby. The lobby is designed as a transparent building because the officers want what they call eyes on the port. They want to see what's going on all around them. But at the same time, the visitors get to be enjoying nature outside. Everybody wins. The Design Excellence Program had the wisdom to implement an art and architecture program too. Now this is Jones Studio's contribution. We embedded footprints in the tilt slab concrete walls to sort of talk about the journey. Kim Sun-Ju did a video installation, and Matthew Moore took a mountain range to the west, inverted it, and cut it from aluminum to shade this walkway. Now, this is what I'm talking about. This is what we encountered our first visit. And the photograph is taken from the same position as this. Now, this is why I love being an architect. I get to take this and do that, and do that. So was there pushback from CBP? Yeah, there was pushback. But we talked about this in very pragmatic ways. We even talked about the science of affecting people's mental attitude. and they came around. Now, you ask people how many colors are in the American flag, and they will always say three. But if you ever watch a flag blowing in the wind, there's an infinite amount of colors. And that was the inspiration for marking the threshold, the gateway to the United States through Nogales. But it's also very pragmatic. The private vehicles know to go to the red zone, pedestrians go to the white zone, commercial trucks go to the blue zone. And you can see the wall in the foreground there. And in spite of our best efforts, it's still not on the signal. These positive, improvements on the border are never reported. And it's still a political hot potato, but at least the visitors feel welcome. So now we're going to move further west. If you've ever driven from San Diego to Yuma, you will go through the sand dunes. Again, that's something's beautiful and ethereal about this photograph. And now you see where the red square is, Baja, Ciudad Cortez, mainland Mexico. This is in the far southwest corner of Arizona. Sand everywhere, but why is all of that green occurring there? The Colorado River. This is next to the Imperial Valley. 95% of the leafy greens that you consume come from this place. And it's made possible by the combination of year-round sunshine and what used to be the endless supply of Colorado River water. So there are hundreds of thousands of acres of crops. They have to be planted, maintained, and harvested. Yuma, population 100,000, doesn't have the labor force. Definitely San Luis, Arizona, that's like 40,000 people. It doesn't have the labor force. But San Luis, Rio, Colorado definitely has the labor force. Now, somehow, in our broken, obsolete immigration system, when money's involved, we figure out how to issue 8,000 work permits. And these wonderful people are able to cross the border every morning and return every night to their families. But they were having to start queuing up at 3 o'clock in the morning in order to cross the border because it had become so obsolete. And to the credit of our government, they said, this is unacceptable. We have to process them quicker. So this is an aerial view of San Luis. And that's what they were queuing up for, to get to go into this space. And that's why, and it was very inefficient. So again, this is why I love being an architect. We get to take this and turn it into this. And those sawtooths in the ceiling, besides distributing daylight, also wayfinding devices. It's very linear. And it was inspired by the crops themselves. And the flood irrigated crop in the lower left-hand corner, you see the waters in the valley and it's reflecting the sky. You invert that diagram and the sky becomes the skyline. It happens on the interior, it's expressed on the exterior, and of course, it's expressed in the building. Now, this little building, I mean, that's it. That was our project. And it was able to reduce the wait times to less than an hour. So these people that are working in the fields for our benefit get to spend more time with their families. Okay, let's keep going. This is where Deborah comes in. We have now partnered with Gruen and Associates. Deborah Gerard here in the front row is a principal there. Best partners we've ever had. But we're still a little company. And we Deborah's bench depth has helped us out a lot, not to mention her knowledge. So that rectangle up in the upper left-hand corner, that's Otay Mesa, which is south of San Diego and adjacent to Tijuana. The difference with this port, this is the before shot. Mariposa was 5 miles west of Nogales, and the San Luis job was sort of landlocked within the San Luis port. But here we have the the land port defining the southern edge of a small community. And it kind of was like a prison. And of course, we fix all the circulation, you know, that when you have such a low bar, it's really easy to look at it, you know. But the important thing is along that northern edge, southern edge of Otay, we put program in order to create an urban, you know, edge. And here's the little town. You can see this is the port. This piece of art, that's kind of your reference point there. This was it. This was what the government was doing to the little community of Otay Mesa. And you look close enough, you'll see razor wire topping everything. So we took that and changed it to this. So this is a rendering. I don't have new photography of this yet, but it makes all the difference. Instead of this thing you just don't even want to look at, it has now become a point of pride for the town of Otay Mesa. And people are treated with respect and dignity. They have shade now, and they have a garden. And this is soon after the port was open. Construction shot of the lobby, beautiful light patterns. Even the truckers get a little bit of nature on their way through the port. We limit as much pavement as possible. If you left it up to CBP, the whole thing would be paved just in case they need that area someday. But we're able to convince them that no, let's just, you know, build only what's necessary, hydro seed the rest, and let nature take its course. So I always love this photograph, the juxtaposition of the environment and the new part. And now we're going to go back to San Luis because after this, we were hired to redo the entire port. Thanks to the Biden administration and the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, we're now doing the first net zero land port of entry in the world. And the orange rectangle is our little pedestrian processing building. All the rest was existing. You can see the lack of pattern. You know, maybe that's the key to designing major circulation system. Just stand back and look at the graphics. If they look good, it's probably better. So, but here again, you know, San Luis Port is the edge of the little town of San Luis. So again, we have the opportunity to do something that the community can be proud of. And so this is it. This is the gateway to Mexico. And if you're on the other side, it's the gateway to the United States. It's like a pocket park. Now, this is the till slab concrete that we did at Mariposa. You can see the embedded footprints in it. We can't do that again, can we? So, and the reason we do till slab is because of the remoteness of these sites. You know, we can set up our own batching plant and start, you know, build bulletproof walls, you know, with relatively economical material. And we're using, you know, low carbon concrete now. But when you're redoing a port, you're going to be jackhammering a lot of old pavement and a lot of old asphalt. And you get mountains of it. And it just seems a shame to have to throw that away, right? So we put it into the bottom of the forms. You know, till slabs always poured horizontally. And then we wanted an alternative slab that recognized or remembered, you know, where it is, where it comes from. And we had an intern. We wanted to embed lettuce leaves in the concrete. Now, by this time, you know, CBP trusts us. And at any given meeting, Customs and Border Protection meeting, there's at least 5 people with guns on their hips, right? Like we're talking about lettuce leaves in their walls, and they're okay, you know. So again, to this, you know, you develop these relationships. And when you're sincere and when it pays off and when it works, then people start to come around. So we put lettuce leaves out in our parking lot. We poured concrete over them, and it all sucked and it didn't work. And this young intern, she goes to the grocery store. She buys the best head of lettuce she can find and then takes the best leaves off of the head of lettuce. She scans them and has a program that reads the contours of the scan, which we can hand to a guy to make a silicone mold. And they lay that in the concrete, and then you tilt it all up and you get this. And it's just fantastic. And so, you know, working for the federal government is great. I mean, it would not be, but they are our best and most progressive client. It's redundant. So again, transparent lobby. We're under construction. Hopefully, maybe I get invited back in a few years and you can see the finished product. But then our original pedestrian processing building is over there on the far left. You can see all the new programming elements, but we never gave up on the improved experience for the pedestrians. And rather than separating people with barbed wire and razor wire, CBP is now seeing the advantage of, you know, letting gardens, you know, play a larger role in this experience of entering the United States. There you see the full build out. So I'm going to conclude this with, you know, I get to have all the fun. Here I am, and I'm getting to talk to you. I spent the night in a Richard Neutra house last night. But it's, believe me, it's not just me, and it's not just Deborah. We have a big team, and we have great engineers, structural, mechanical, you name it, we've got it. And so I want to, you know, give a shout out to my studio family. This is Tempe. Arizona State University is down here on the right. You can see our football stadium there. That water course is Tempe Town Lake. The council had a good idea. Let's dam up the Salt River and create a town lake. It's been very popular. And we located our office adjacent to all of that. What I told CNN this morning, it's the last ghetto in Tempe. And, but it's at the diversion, it's at the main diversion of the canal system the Anastasi built hundreds and hundreds of years ago. By hand, they dug it by hand. Today, the reason Phoenix is still there is because we have, you know, formalized this canal system, and it may not be that well known, but we have more linear miles of canal than Amsterdam and Phoenix and Venice combined. And I just love it that we were, you know, sitting at a very important influence. And so these are, you know, 2016 shots. Of course, we harvest what little rain we get, and we use it to irrigate the plants. You know, most of us irrigate our landscape with potable water, city water. If you were to capture rainwater and see the difference that it makes, plants really do like rainwater way better than potable water. And these trees are huge. I mean, it's just, our parking lot is a park. We were able to convince the city of Tempe, you know, asphalt's bad, you know, decomposed granite is good, it doesn't radiate heat, it absorbs water. And they still made me paint stripes, you know, to parking spaces, even though obviously you park between the trees. I said, fine. I'm too old to argue anymore. And so I painted the dirt, and then I did after seeing that this block wall, talk about hell getting a building permit for that, but it was worth it. And illegal sunken conference room, but it's sunken because we wanted the table to be flush with the garden outside. And there's a light show every day. There's an 8-inch skylight that runs along the back of the wall. I never know what's going to happen. It's just beautiful things. You just, give nature an opportunity. She'll take it from there. The peak that you see up on the ceiling is sunlight being reflected off the red carpet. We call this the family table. We all sort of work at the same desk. And I think that's the secret to our success, that we can pull off these huge jobs and with various, at least small Jones Studio team. There they are. So handsome. To my right in the suit is my younger brother, Neil. He got a master's in business and a master's in architecture. If you ever want to have your own practice, you have to respect it as a business. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how good of a designer you are, your days may be numbered. The tall gentleman in the blue shirt next to me, that's Jacob Benny. He's an incredible project manager. He will take over Jones Studio someday, along with the bald guy standing next to Neil. That's Brian Farling, who will replace me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just handing him the responsibility. And so if you ever get to Tempe, please come by. Doors always open. Thank you for listening.